Welcome to this chapter. This content is narrated using a cloned version of my voice for clarity and consistency. In this lesson, we'll explore how the world economy is becoming more and more global. We'll look at the main forces behind this change. These are the key reasons why countries are becoming more connected than ever before. As globalization grows, national borders start to matter less in business. We'll also see how companies are changing the way they operate across different countries, and why they need to adapt to survive and succeed. But it's not all smooth sailing. There are also serious concerns about globalization, things like job losses, growing inequality, and the loss of local culture. Let's get started. Globalization means the world's economies are becoming more connected and more dependent on each other. It's a shift toward a global system, where it's easier to trade, invest, and do business across borders. Barriers like tariffs and restrictions are coming down. At the same time, distance feels shorter thanks to better transportation and faster communication. Cultures are also starting to look more alike. People in different countries are using similar products and following similar trends. You can see the effects of globalization all around you. It's in the cars people drive. It's in the food they eat. It's in the jobs they do. There are two main sides to globalization. The first is the globalization of markets. This means that national markets, which used to be separate, are now coming together. They are starting to form one large global marketplace. People in different countries are beginning to want similar things. Tastes and preferences are starting to look alike. For example, think about Coca-Cola, Citigroup credit cards, IKEA furniture, or McDonald's. These brands are used by people all over the world. Companies of all sizes benefit from this trend. By selling the same or similar products everywhere, they help shape a more global market. Now, the second side is the globalization of production. This means that companies get their goods and services from different parts of the world. Why do they do this? To take advantage of differences between countries, like lower labor costs, cheaper land, or better materials. This helps them save money and compete better with other companies. For example, a firm might design a product in the United States, make parts in China, and assemble it in Mexico. By spreading production across the globe, companies can be more efficient and more competitive. Let's define international business. International business is the engine that drives globalization. It includes all commercial transactions that happen between two or more countries. These transactions can take many forms. Some of the most common international business activities include international trade, like exporting and importing goods and services, international investment, such as foreign direct investment, mergers, and portfolio investment, licensing, where one company allows another to use its intellectual property, management contracts, where firms provide expertise and services to manage operations abroad, and franchising, where a company gives others the right to use its brand and systems, like opening a McDonald's franchise. These activities allow firms to enter new markets, access resources, and build a global presence. Here's a real-world example of globalization in action: the Chevrolet Malibu. What you see here is a global value chain. Although this car is assembled in the United States, the parts come from all over the world. Let's look at a few examples. The alternator comes from France. The instrument cluster and cylinder liners come from Germany. The tires are made in Japan. The windshield and windows are from the United Kingdom. Other parts, like the transmission, fuel lines, and door panels, are supplied by companies based in the US. These components are often manufactured in low-cost countries, then shipped to General Motors for final assembly in Kansas. This shows how even a single product can involve dozens of countries, making international coordination essential. This is the reality of modern manufacturing: global, interconnected, and highly strategic. Over the past 75 years, many global organizations have been created. Their job is to help manage the global economy, set fair rules, and solve problems between countries. Let's take a look at some of the key players. First, the World Trade Organization, or WTO. This group replaced an older agreement called GATT. Its job is to make sure countries follow the rules of global trade. As of 2023, the WTO had 164 member countries. Together, these countries are responsible for about 98% of all world trade. Next, we have the International Monetary Fund, or IMF. The IMF helps keep the world's financial system stable. It offers support to countries facing economic trouble. Then there's the World Bank. Its focus is on helping poorer countries grow by giving them loans, advice, and support for development. Another major organization is the United Nations, or UN. The UN works to keep peace, protect human rights, and encourage cooperation between countries. It also helps solve big global problems like poverty, climate change, and conflict. Finally, there is the Group of 20, or G20. This group includes the finance ministers and central bank leaders from the world's 19 largest economies, plus the European Union. Together, the G20 represents 90% of global GDP and 80% of world trade. These global institutions all play a major role in supporting a stable and fair global business environment. But it's important to note that these organizations are not without controversy. Some people question their goals and whether they truly serve all nations fairly. There are concerns that powerful countries have more influence over decisions. Others argue that the needs of smaller or poorer countries may be ignored. So while these institutions play an important role, it's also essential to think critically about who benefits and who may be left out. Back in the early 1960s, the United States was clearly the world's leading industrial power. It produced a large share of global output, and its influence in the world economy was unmatched. But by 2022, things had changed. The US still held a strong position, accounting for 25.2% of global output. However, this was a relative decline, not an absolute one. In other words, the US didn't shrink. Other countries simply grew faster. Most of that growth came from Asia. China, for example, is now the world's second largest economy. It alone accounts for 17.4% of global output. Looking into the future, most forecasts show that developing countries will keep growing. Countries like China, India, Indonesia, Mexico, Brazil, Russia, South Korea, and Thailand are expected to take a bigger share of the world economy. At the same time, the share of rich, industrialized countries like the United States, Japan, Germany, and the United Kingdom is expected to decline. So, what does this mean for global business? For international companies, it means that more growth and opportunity may come from developing nations. It also means that new competitors will likely emerge from these rising economies. Firms that want to succeed globally will need to keep an eye on these fast-growing markets and be ready to compete with strong new players from around the world. Two major forces are driving globalization. The first is the decline of barriers to trade and investment. The second is rapid advances in technology. Let's take a closer look. After World War II, many industrialized countries, especially in the West, began working to make trade between nations easier. They started lowering tariffs and other barriers that made it hard to buy and sell across borders. Under an agreement called GATT, countries negotiated lower tariffs and made progress in other important areas. This included issues like intellectual property and trade in services. Later, the World Trade Organization, or WTO, was created. It gave the global system a way to settle trade disputes and enforce trade rules. As a result, international trade became more stable and predictable. But that's not all. Countries also began signing trade deals with each other, both one-on-one and in larger regional groups. Back in the early 1990s, there were fewer than 50 of these trade agreements. Today, there are over 300. At the same time, foreign direct investment, or FDI, has grown dramatically. In 1990, global FDI was about $244 billion. By 2022, that number had jumped to $1.3 trillion. Now let's talk about the second big force, technology. In just a few decades, we've seen incredible changes in communication, information processing, and transportation. Today, people can send information instantly across the world. Companies can manage global supply chains from a single office, and goods can be shipped across continents faster and cheaper than ever before. Together, lower trade barriers and new technology have opened the door to a truly global economy. Is globalization a good thing? Many economists, business leaders, and world leaders believe it is. They argue that globalization boosts economic growth, it raises incomes, and it creates jobs in countries that take part in the global economy. But not everyone agrees. There's growing opposition to globalization around the world. Some critics say it benefits the rich more than the poor. Others are concerned that it results in job losses, undermines local industries, damages the environment, or endangers national identity. In recent years, we've seen some strong political reactions to globalization, especially in the United States. For example, President Donald Trump often criticized free trade agreements. He said they were bad for American workers and industries. Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, also known as the TPP. He also renegotiated NAFTA, the trade deal between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. In addition, he raised tariffs on Chinese goods, sparking a major trade dispute between the U.S. and China. Trump also withdrew the U.S. from several international organizations and agreements. These included the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. He claimed that many of these institutions were unfair to America. His actions marked a major shift, a direct challenge to the idea of globalization and to the international rules and partnerships that support it. This raises big questions for all of us. What kind of global economy do we want? And what role should each country play? These debates are ongoing, and they're likely to shape the future of international business for years to come. Managing an international business is not the same as managing a business that operates only in one country. There are at least 4 major differences to keep in mind. First, every country is different. Countries have different cultures, laws, economic systems, and business environments. What works in one place might not work in another. Second, the challenges are greater and more complex. Managers in international firms deal with a wider range of problems. They must think about logistics, legal systems, languages, and local customer preferences, all at the same time. Third, international businesses must follow global trade rules and government regulations. This means working within limits set by national governments and international agreements. Sometimes these rules can change quickly and create new risks. And fourth, international transactions involve foreign currencies. This adds financial complexity. Exchange rates can change over time, which affects prices, profits, and costs. Because of all these differences, managers can't just copy and paste strategies from one country to another. They need to adjust their practices to fit the local environment. At the same time, they must also keep a level of consistency across their global operations. Too much change can create confusion, but not enough change can lead to failure in local markets. The key is finding the right balance. A smart international manager knows when to adapt and when to stick with a proven global approach. As we've seen in this chapter, globalization is reshaping the world economy. It connects markets, merges cultures, and creates both opportunities and challenges for international business. We explored how technology, trade, and economic shifts are driving this change, and how businesses must adapt to stay competitive. But it's not just businesses that are evolving. The way we learn and share knowledge is changing too. This lecture was created using my AI-cloned voice, made possible by recent advances in artificial intelligence. Tools like this don't just save time, they also open the door to new ways of learning. With the help of AI, this same lecture could be translated into multiple languages. That means students around the world could access the same content in their own language, in my voice. That's the power of globalization. And that's the power of AI, working together to make knowledge more accessible, more personal, and more global than ever before. Thanks for learning with me, and I'll see you in the next lesson.